Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. It's been 6 months since you came out of a coma after surviving the car accident that took the life of your wife and 2 kids. And after what feels like an eternity of hospital beds and rehab workouts that would make even the Hulk break a sweat, you're finally free to go home. But the mere thought of hopping into a car sends shivers down your spine. It's like your brain is staging a horror movie marathon complete with screeching tires and broken glass. Forget entering the car, even hearing the sounds of cars driving along the road feels like someone is holding a grenade over your head. And that is what we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like your brain's way of saying, hey, remember that thing that happened? Let's relive it over and over again, just for kicks. PTSD doesn't just happen out of the blue. The disorder only starts after you have experienced a major traumatic event and starts anytime you see, hear, or even smell anything related to that event. You would immediately break into a sweat, fear, rapid breathing, and even faint sometimes. One minute you're minding your own business, and the next you're having flashbacks and nightmares that make you feel like you're starring in your very own horror flick. Bipolar disorder. If you've ever gone to an amusement park and gotten on a fast roller coaster ride, then you might understand what it feels like to have bipolar disorder, except this is not the fun kind of ride with happy screams and cotton candy. This type of roller coaster ride would feel like you have 2 different people living inside your brain, literally. The first person would be the manic phase, which is the crazy, extremely hyperactive phase. During the manic phase, you would feel like you just won a lottery ticket and drank a double shot of espresso. You'd be extremely happy, energized, and ready to take on Mike Tyson in a boxing match. But then, just when you think you've got it all figured out, the depressive phase hits you like a ton of bricks. Like someone just threw ice water on you. Suddenly, you're like Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants, grumpy, pessimistic, and convinced that everything is pointless. These extreme mood swings can happen quickly and without warning, and for some people, aggression and violence are thrown into the mix. It's like your brain is playing a cruel game of ping pong with your emotions. Scientists and research have shown that bipolar disorder can be linked to genetics, brain chemistry, and life experiences, and it affects around 40 million people worldwide. It's not something you can catch like the flu, and it's definitely not something you can just snap out of. Schizophrenia. As a child, you probably had that imaginary friend who always seemed to be there, and nobody else could hear, see, or even talk to him except you. However, as you got older, you realized that the imaginary friend was just a trick in your mind, and they were never actually real. Now, for someone with schizophrenia, that imaginary friend is as accurate as a living, breathing person. This means they can see, hear, or talk to that person even when nobody else can. A person with this disorder also has very vivid delusions and would sometimes make up another reality. For example, they would believe that they are a secret agent on a mission to save the world. It's like being stuck in a game of 2 truths and a lie, but you're not sure which one is the lie anymore. It's like their mind is a radio that's constantly changing stations. One minute you're tuned into reality, the next you pick up signals from a completely different universe. Unfortunately, this mental disorder is the fate of about 1 in every 300 people, and there is no cure for it. Still, early diagnosis, therapy, antipsychotic medications, and self-management techniques can help manage symptoms and improve quality of life. Depressive disorder. If you have depression, it would feel like you're constantly stuck in a world that is entirely black and white with no single color. Every day seems like a terrible case of bad Mondays. However, depression isn't just about feeling sad for a while or just having a bad day. During a depressive episode, there's a constant emptiness and sadness that you would feel like someone used a giant vacuum cleaner to suck out all of the joy in your life. You'll lose interest in everything you used to love, like pizza, ice cream, your dog, and even watching YouTube videos on your favorite channel, The Evaluator. Losing interest in everything would also mean that you'll just spend your days sleeping or not sleeping at all, eating everything you can find, or not eating at all for days, and your energy level would be the same as a sloth's on a lazy Sunday. This disorder affects roughly 280 million people worldwide, and most people who have depression may not even realize it. But if you're constantly feeling sad and tired, you may want to see a therapist who can help you work through your feelings and learn different coping strategies. Anxiety disorder. Anxiety is the stomach-churning, sweat-inducing cocktail of fear and worry that's as unpredictable as the weather on a spring day. With an anxiety disorder, you would literally feel like you're constantly being chased by a giant grizzly bear with an axe. You would feel like your heart is literally trying to jump out of your chest. In addition to this, you'd also experience sweaty palms like you were holding a water balloon, and it'd feel like your stomach is doing somersaults like an Olympic gymnast. Now, a little anxiety in small doses is helpful because it's your body's natural response to danger, which helps keep you alert and sometimes motivates you to do your best. But when anxiety starts to interfere with your day-to-day living, it may have just crossed the line into disorder territory. This means that you'll be getting loads of anxiety that makes your brain spin faster like a hamster on a wheel. You could literally be having a very great day but would suddenly just feel an overwhelming sense of terror for no reason at all. You'll be stuck worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet, replaying past mistakes like a broken record, and second-guessing yourself so much you'd give a magic 8-ball a run for its money. Anxiety disorder affects about 301 million people worldwide, but the good news is anxiety doesn't have to be your roommate forever. Proper cognitive therapy, deep relaxation techniques, and medications can help you lead a full, vibrant, and happy life. Eating disorder. Now, an eating disorder is like a mean bully that convinces you that there is seriously something wrong with your body, but this time the bully is inside your head. It's like your brain just develops an unhealthy relationship with food similar to what you've had with your ex. For instance, some people with an eating disorder might become convinced that they need to be stick thin, no matter how skinny they already are, so their brain tells them to restrict their food intake or go on severely extreme diets like eating just one egg every day. On the flip side, others might go through cycles of binge eating, where they'll inhale massive amounts of food in one sitting and then feel so guilty that they try to get rid of the food by forcing themselves to throw up or abusing laxatives. Their brain is that crazy party buddy who keeps encouraging you to go too hard and then you regret it the next day. This toxic relationship with food is often rooted in deep emotional issues like anxiety, trauma, depression, or low self-esteem. It could either lead to anorexia, which is going on a hunger strike against yourself, or bulimia, which is the eat-purge cycle. In the United States alone, over 14 million people suffer from eating disorders. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. Imagine you are at a circus where something new and exciting is happening everywhere you look. Acrobats are flipping through the air, clowns are juggling colorful balls, and tigers are jumping through flaming hoops. Your eyes are darting from one thing to the next, trying to take it all in, but focusing on just one thing is almost impossible. That's kind of what it's like to have ADHD, a wild three-ring circus happening in your brain 24/7. Your brain is like a hyperactive ringmaster, constantly whipping you from one whirlwind thought to the next without allowing you to catch your breath. If you have ADHD, you will often struggle with things like paying attention, staying organized, and controlling your impulses. It's like your mental switch is always on and switching it off is impossible no matter how hard you try. Your brains would be constantly bombarded with exciting possibilities you want to explore all at once. It's like a kid in a candy store with an unlimited allowance. This disorder affects between 129 million and 366 million children, teenagers, and adults globally, and there are types of ADHD. If you have inattentive ADHD, you will struggle to focus and complete tasks even if you want to. You would always lose concentration and have an extremely short attention span. Then there's hyperactive impulsive ADHD, which makes it difficult for you to stay still and control your urges. You'd be unable to sit still or stay quiet, talking a mile a minute like an auctioneer on speed. And then there's combined ADHD, which is what you would get if attentive ADHD and hyperactive impulse ADHD had a baby. A very energetic, easily distracted baby with no volume control. Obsessive compulsive disorder. OCD is like having a strict, overbearing mother living in your head, constantly nagging you to clean, check, and organize everything. But instead of just rolling your eyes and ignoring her, you feel compelled to obey. Living with OCD would often make you have unwanted thoughts or fears that just won't go away. It's like having a mental itch that you just can't scratch, no matter how hard you try. Over time, it just develops into these compulsions, which are repetitive behaviors or mental acts that make you want to fix everything as a way of reducing your anxiety or preventing something terrible from happening. For example, you often worry about germs and getting sick, so to ease your fears, you wash your hands over and over again, clean your house at least 12 times a day, and you'd spray so many disinfectants on anything you come across that you could single-handedly solve the ozone layer crisis. This condition is quite common, affecting about 79 million people worldwide, but people who are diagnosed with OCD are often treated with cognitive behavioral therapy. Mental disorders can be very challenging, but you can join our Discord channel today to help you learn everything you need to know. Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Imagine you're in a room full of people and everyone is laughing at a joke, but you can't seem to get the hang of the joke or what they're even talking about, and it feels like you're lost on another planet or something. Well, this is the typical day-to-day routine of people with autism spectrum disorder, ASD. This neurological condition affects how people communicate, interact, and perceive the world. It's like having a brain running on a slightly different operating system than most people. It might take a little longer to process certain things or get hung up on details that other people wouldn't even notice. If you're on the autism spectrum, you might struggle with things like social interactions, making eye contact, or even understanding plain old jokes. Still, on the flip side, you might have intense interests or hobbies you focus on with laser-like precision, be highly creative, or even have a fantastic memory for details, like remembering what your second-grade teacher wore on the first Monday of October. But then, autism isn't a one-size-fits-all condition. It's called a spectrum because everyone on the spectrum is different, with their unique combinations of traits and characteristics. So, while some people on the spectrum might be nonverbal, others might be highly articulate. Some might have exceptional skills in math or music, while others might struggle with academic or occupational tasks. ASD affects about 1% of the global population, and even though there's no medical procedure to reverse the condition, it can be managed through behavioral therapy, educational interventions, and medications to help with the anxiety, irritability, and hyperactivity that often accompanies ASD. Sleep disorder. According to the World Sleep Society, about 45% of people globally suffer from a type of sleep disorder. One of these disorders is insomnia, which is a condition where you just can't drift off to dreamland no matter how exhausted you are or how hard you try. It's like your brain is having a house party and forgot to invite your body. Aside from insomnia, where you spend more time counting sheep than actual sleeping, some people have to deal with narcolepsy. With this delightful disorder, you can't stop falling asleep even if it's in the middle of the day and you slept like a log all night. You could nod off anywhere, driving, cooking, or even during a job interview. I'm really excited about this opportunity. Well, you can see how this could be a huge problem. And then there's sleep apnea, which would feel like having a built-in alarm clock in your throat. With sleep apnea, your breathing literally stops for short periods during the night, and if this continues, you'll essentially begin to snore louder than a freight train. And it can be pretty fatal if left untreated, kind of like hitting the snooze button one too many times. Sleeping disorders can even make you sleepwalk, sleep talk, or even sleep eat. It's like having a secret life you don't remember in the morning. Just hope you don't sleepwalk your way into an embarrassing situation like raiding your neighbor's fridge naked. Paranoia. It is very normal to get scared and suspicious of people sometimes, especially when there's a valid reason to be. But for a person with paranoia, that fear and suspicion is multiplied by 10,000. Let's say you're at work and see two colleagues talking quietly in a corner. You'd probably think they have personal matters to discuss. But a person with paranoia would believe that they're plotting to get her fired or even killed. It's like your brain has literally turned into a suspicious detective that sees threats everywhere, even when there's no real reason to be scared. You'd suspect and think everybody and everything around you is out to hurt and get you. Coupled with your irrational fear and mistrust of everybody, you'd also get easily offended and defensive and be very hostile, argumentative, and aggressive. It'll basically be a game of, how many bad habits can I have? This mental disorder can be caused by genes, traumatic life events, and extremely stressful life events. Dyslexia. Now, imagine a classroom where kids are learning to read and write. Most kids would pick up reading and writing after some time, but a child with dyslexia might find it much harder to even recognize the letters, talk more about reading the words. It's like their brain is on a different learning adventure that needs extra time and help to find the correct part. Dyslexia basically affects the part of your brain that processes language, making it more difficult to learn how to read, write, or spell. Words and numbers always appear like a jumbled mess they can't understand. If a person with dyslexia were trying to make pancakes using a cookbook, the recipe would say, add 2 spoons of sugar, but they'd probably see, add 2 spoonsful slat. Writing down their thoughts or even copying a text may be very slow, challenging, and full of spelling errors. However, dyslexia is not about intelligence because people with dyslexia are just as smart as everyone, but they are just taught differently. People with dyslexia use tools like phonetics programs to help break up words into sounds, audiobooks, and speech-to-text software. Allodoxophobia. Let's say you are at a lively party, enjoying yourself and engaging in a lot of fun conversations, diverse opinions, and viewpoints. For most people, this scene is highly enjoyable and, quite frankly, very stimulating. But for someone who has allodoxophobia, as the conversation grows, you'd begin to become shaky and scared as each differing opinion sounds more like a bullet being shot at you. You hate the fact that other people are openly sharing their opinions and they don't sound like you want to hear. Suddenly, you'd find yourself wishing you'd just stayed at home to binge watch your favorite sitcom. After all, the television doesn't talk back or offer opinions. While this sounds like what most Twitter users suffer from, this phobia is so intense that people who have it are not even willing or ready to listen to anything that goes against them. They are so scared of criticism and words of caution that it eventually grows into total hate for others' views or ideas. The roots of this phobia are actually tragic, as it mostly manifests among children who have been verbally abused or criticized by their teachers or parents. Because of the constant criticism and abuse, they would grow up to become very defensive when other people share their own opinions. Arithmophobia. One day in school, you're sitting in your algebra class, pencil in hand, as the teacher writes a new problem on the board. It's a mix of numbers, symbols, fractions, and the works. As the teacher calls you to solve it in front of everyone, you immediately break out in a cold sweat, and the room starts to spin. For most people, it's just a tough math question, but for someone with arithmophobia, it's like being asked to defuse a bomb without a manual. Suffering from this phobia can make simple things like paying bills, holding down jobs that involve numbers, or even managing a budget feel very scary. They would avoid anything that has numbers involved. If your teacher or parent harshly punished you for getting a math question wrong as a child, there's a high chance that you would begin to dislike numbers intensely, and seeing them alone would lead to panic attacks and extreme stress. Suddenly, 2 plus 2 feels more like 2 plus 2 equals run away! Nomophobia. According to scientific research, the average American man spends at least 4.5 hours on their phones every day for all sorts of activities. But for nomophobes, that's like telling them to eat just one apple as opposed to having a full meal. You see, that's because they have nomophobia, an intense fear or anxiety of being detached from mobile device connectivity. In simple terms, you can call it phone addiction. A person who's addicted to their mobile device would want to be with it 24/7, never letting it out of their sight even for 1 second. They would prefer to remain in the virtual world rather than exist in the real world, and the moment their devices are taken away or switched off, an insane panic that's accompanied by trembling, agitation, and profuse sweating starts. They believe that the minute they get disconnected from their phone, it automatically means that they've become disconnected from the world, and anything could go wrong, including, heavens forbid, missing a meme that could be life-changing. Somnophobia. So, you're having a really terrible day at work and you can feel a headache coming on soon. The first advice anyone would offer would be to go home and rest. They're basically implying that you need to go home, shower, and sleep for a couple of hours. This is because sleep is a very great relaxant for people going through stress. Well, for someone who has somnophobia, you might as well tell them just to chew and swallow 20 bowls of hot chili and get it over with. This is because they are so terrified of sleeping that chewing hot chili without milk sounds more welcoming. Somnophobia is the literal fear of sleep, and people who have this phobia could go as far as not sleeping for 4 days so that they don't have to close their eyes. This crippling fear of sleep normally stems from fear of what might happen when they sleep. They are so scared of having nightmares or experiencing sleep paralysis that they would rather stay awake than go to sleep. However, this phobia could lead to more dangerous situations because chronic lack of sleep can increase the risk of high blood pressure and diabetes. Chorophobia. Your wedding day will go down in history as one of the best days of your life, and a lot is expected from the married couple, from exchanging their wedding vows to the very first couple dance. But what happens if you have an intense fear of dancing? Yes, there is a phobia called chorophobia, and it is characterized by a person being absolutely terrified of dancing, or even being in a situation where people are dancing. This phobia stops the person from participating in any form of activity or occasion in which dancing is involved, like prom, clubs, or parties. Basically, anywhere that people would shake their bodies to rhythms. The minute they see people dancing, it would break out in a cold sweat that would lead to bouts of panic attacks. While many people might joke about having 2 left feet, those with chorophobia feel such extreme self-consciousness that a casual invitation to dance can make them dash to the nearest exit. So if you notice someone avoiding the dance floor at any cost, they might not be shy but actively dodging the disco. Ablutophobia. You've often heard that cleanliness is next to godliness, but for people who have ablutophobia, you're just chatting shit. You probably disliked taking baths when you were little, but there are the rare few that never outgrew this fear. They have an irrational fear of bathing or washing and would rather stink than let water come anywhere near them. The fear of bathing is so crippling that just thinking about it would make someone with this phobia experience a racing pulse, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, and even nausea. Some may even pass out and faint. This phobia often starts at a very young age but grows into a more chronic fear as the individual gets older and is always associated with the person experiencing a traumatic event that involves water. Because bathing and cleaning yourself is an essential part of hygiene, people who have ablutophobia have body odor, skin irritations, and fungal growth that can turn into infections. Casadistrophobia. The end and destruction of the entire world can sound really scary. You know, the sky falling on the earth and the sun and moon all crashing into each other. If you're a big fan of sci-fi movies, then you'd understand why this can be a very daunting thought. However, some people actually live every day with the intense fear that the sky would actually fall and crush the earth, and gravity would basically invert and swallow them up. People who have this specific phobia would avoid anywhere there's an open sky, like a football field or garden. They feel safer on cloudy days or when they're surrounded by trees or tall buildings that block the direct sky. The irrational fear of being swallowed up by the sky can become so crippling that they would never attempt to step out of their house again. Ironically, the perfectly safe space would likely be a room without any windows, like a basement. Arachibutyrophobia. It's hard to spell, hard to pronounce, and even harder to understand. For millions of people worldwide suffering from peanut allergies, it is totally rational to be frightened of peanut butter, as even a little intake can cause extreme shock and even death. But this weird phobia has no business with a peanut butter allergy because a person suffering from it actually has an irrational fear of getting peanut butter stuck to the roof of their mouth. Like, seriously. So you're simply trying to savor a snack and out of nowhere it becomes a literal sticky situation. This strange phobia often comes as a packaged deal with pseudodysphagia, which is the fear of swallowing or choking while swallowing. Well, the upside of this strange and extremely specific phobia is that it can simply be avoided by staying away from peanut butter and turning down PB&J sandwiches. Plutophobia. There's a popular saying that money is the root of all evil. Well, the people who have this phobia took this saying very personally because they hate and avoid money at all costs. They hate and avoid money at all costs. Imagine being allergic to your bank account. What this means is that people with plutophobia fear money. They are so scared of wealthy people and would start to panic at the thought of even becoming wealthy themselves, literally. They generally dread money and having anything to deal with it. Sometimes, they would even go as far as sabotaging their careers just to avoid making more money and becoming wealthy. This phobia mostly stems from the fear of responsibility associated with being a rich person, or they fear they might become victims of robbery the minute they start having money. So while most people dream of hitting the jackpot, plutophobes are out there doing everything they can to miss it. Optophobia. It's another morning and your alarm clock is the villain of your dreams. You're supposed to wake up, but part of you really wants to keep your eyes closed and sleep for just a little bit longer. Or maybe you're at the movie theater watching what the critics have called the scariest movie of the decade. And at the first big scare, you clamp your eyes shut, hoping that nothing can get through. This is an extremely mild version of everyday life for a person who has optophobia, which is the intense, debilitating fear of opening their eyes. They honestly believe that opening their eyes would cause them harm, so they keep it closed always and function without ever opening their eyes. A person with optophobia would remain in dimly lit rooms and tie a cloth around their eyes so that they can't see anything that could potentially cause them harm. Globophobia. Balloons are always used in ceremonies and birthday parties to decorate the place and make everywhere a lot more memorable. However, for a person with globophobia, which is an intense fear of balloons, seeing a room full of balloons would probably feel like hell to them. This is because they are so scared of balloons that even seeing one on TV would trigger intense anxiety and panic attacks. This rare fear can especially be hard on young children, as they are often more likely to see balloons than adults. It usually starts when you experience a traumatic event that a balloon was involved in, such as popping the balloon and being scared of the noise. Sometimes people with this phobia also have a great fear of clowns, as the two, balloons and clowns, are often found together. Pogonophobia. The people who have this phobia have an extreme fear of facial hair. They would go to any extent to avoid people who have facial hair because they associate it with poverty or homelessness. People with pogonophobia would avoid barbershops and hair salons like it's the plague. They would even avoid certain Christmas holiday shopping, like going to the mall in case someone there is wearing a Santa costume. If a person saw someone with a goatee or mustache, they would immediately break out in a cold sweat, feel dizzy and lightheaded, and would even start to tremble and shake. Phobophobia. In all the phobias we just mentioned, people have a reason for why they developed their fears, but this particular phobia is by far the weirdest. Phobophobia is the intense fear of being afraid. Like you are so afraid of having a phobia that you actually develop a phobia. The fear of phobias is commonly co-diagnosed with another phobia, which means that in your quest to not have a phobia, you pretty much develop a fear of it. If you had this phobia, you would always avoid any social situation that can lead to anxiety or panic. Heliophobia. Vampires. They're exciting, mysterious creatures of myth that feed on blood and live forever. But imagine if you had one of the biggest drawbacks of being a vampire without any of the cool powers to show for it. If that's the case for you, then you may be experiencing heliophobia, a pathological fear of the sun. This fear often comes from concerns about developing skin cancer, but the even more extreme cases can stem from the fear of aging or wrinkling. If you ever experienced a severe case of sunburn, then that would be a trigger that sets the condition off. The people who suffer from this literally live like mythical vampires and would only step outside at night to attend to any business. The dangers of this phobia can cause serious health issues because abstaining from natural light can cause vitamin D deficiencies, which would lead to a weakened immune system, fatigue, and bone pain. Apotemnophilia. Now, once in a while, it's totally normal to try and change your appearance by turning your black hair blonde or shaving it off entirely. You've probably even tried to get a piercing and tattoo before. These are very regular lifestyle changes that just make living a little more interesting. But for someone with the mental condition called apotemnophilia, these changes are just child's play. This mental condition is characterized by the abnormal, intense urge to cut off your healthy body parts because you feel like some part of your body doesn't belong to you. It's a bit like wanting to solve a jigsaw puzzle by removing pieces already in place, and your limbs are the puzzles that have overstayed their welcome. Why cut off your hair when you could literally cut off your entire arm instead? People with apotemnophilia believe that the only way they can feel whole or complete is by cutting off a part of their bodies. The freaking irony. Well, this condition isn't about self-harm in the traditional sense, but it's about aligning their physical body with their internal sense of self. Like your brain's got a weird feng shui rule. This arm's gotta go for balance. Your internet search history would be full of DIY videos on how to remove your limbs and get the desired results successfully. Talk about taking do-it-yourself to a whole new level. Pica. Imagine your taste buds suddenly developing a sense of adventure, so much so that they start craving things that aren't food at all. Pica syndrome is like your stomach deciding it wants to audition for a reality show called Extreme Eating, the non-food edition, and you suddenly have a strong urge to munch on things that are, well, definitely not on the menu. Think of craving chalk like it's your favorite candy, or munching on dirt like it's the latest gourmet snack. You see, instead of grabbing a bag of chips from the fridge, you would head outside and pile dirt, stones, concrete, and even paint chips onto your plate. You may even find yourself browsing the cleaning supplies aisle for dinner ideas. Pica can be caused by a bunch of different things, like nutritional deficiencies or just plain boredom. It's more common in kids and pregnant women whose bodies go through a lot of hormonal changes. The good news is that unlike your wild cravings, pica can be treated. Doctors can help figure out what your body needs so you can return to enjoying normal food. Because while eating chalk might make for a fun party trick, your digestive system will definitely appreciate sticking to actual food. So the next time you find yourself drooling over a bar of soap, remember your taste buds are just trying to keep life interesting. Kagras syndrome. After nearly 2 blissful years of dating, you finally tie the knot with the absolute love of your life. The honeymoon is a dream filled with sun, sand, and way too much pina colada. But when you return, you start to notice something odd. Your spouse, who you know better than anyone, suddenly feels different. Welcome to the mental disorder known as Kagras syndrome, aka imposter syndrome. Forget about doubting your abilities, this is doubting every single person in your life. Kagras syndrome is a mental condition where a person is utterly convinced that someone close to them, like a friend, spouse, or family member, has been replaced by an identical imposter. This bizarre belief often kicks in after severe head trauma or in the presence of brain diseases like Alzheimer's. It's like living in a real-life sci-fi movie where you're constantly convinced that aliens abducted and replaced everyone you know. Familiar places like your home now feel like an elaborate replica, and you begin to feel emotionally detached from people you were once very close with. However, while this condition can feel like you're living in a constant state of a bad sci-fi movie that could lead to depression and frustration, you can still live a very normal and healthy life with therapy and the proper treatment. And if all else fails, remember, the real test of love is standing by someone even when you're convinced they're a robot. Diogenes syndrome. Imagine living in an apartment where every single surface is completely covered with piles of newspapers, food wraps, trash of every kind, old clothes you've had since you were a baby, and even a zoo's worth of stray animals. Now, not only is your entire apartment a chaotic trash house, but your personal hygiene is also someone no one would want to write home about. The last time you had a shower or even changed your clothes was months ago. You see, this is precisely what living with Diogenes syndrome is. It's not just about being messy or dirty, it's an overwhelming and compulsive need to hoard and neglect oneself. The idea of cleaning up or throwing anything away feels as foreign as flying to Mars. If you have this condition, you would withdraw from friends, family, and society and live in self-imposed exile amidst your clutter. The worst of all is that you would literally feel no shame or embarrassment when people are talking about your living conditions. Sadly, Diogenes syndrome usually affects older people and typically starts after they experience a traumatic loss of something or someone dear to them. It's as if your brain created an extreme defense mechanism to loss and decided to hold on to everything it perceives as special, no matter how silly. People with Diogenes syndrome rarely reach out for help and are often diagnosed after a family member reaches out for help on the person's behalf. Kluver-Bucy syndrome. You're just about to start your morning jog when a video from your favorite channel on YouTube, The Evaluator, just pops up on your screen. But just as you try to click it, someone suddenly pushes you from behind, and the next thing you know, you were kissing the concrete like it was your long-lost lover. You stand up and notice a slight bump on your forehead, so you just go back inside, place an ice pack on it, and call it a day. However, a few days later, you start noticing some very odd behaviors. You've been putting random non-edible things in your mouth and chewing on them like a puppy teething on your favorite pair of shoes. And let's not even mention how you became with everything and everyone around you. Just yesterday, you caught yourself eyeing your microwave and thinking, "Ding, you look hot." Well, apparently the fall you had a few days ago has caused a condition known as Kluver-Bucy syndrome, which affects your frontal lobe and amygdala. the area of your brain that is responsible for emotion, behavior, and memory. It's like your brain was a well-organized library before, and Kluver-Bucy syndrome is a little gremlin just misplacing, confusing, and rearranging all the books. Now, not only are you hyperactive in ways that would make even rabbits blush, but you're also forgetting familiar faces and objects. You're also experiencing confusions, short-term memory loss, and a general lack of fear, even in situations that would normally make you scream louder than a horror movie protagonist. Like, you could see a huge angry bear and go to offer it a hug. Kluver-Bucy syndrome can also be caused by severe infections like herpes and conditions like Alzheimer's disease, which also love to play hide-and-seek with your brain cells. So, while your brain's been turned into a playground, remember to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Because honestly, what else can you do when your brain starts thinking microwaves are sexy? Stendhal syndrome. So, your date decided that visiting an art gallery was the perfect way to get to know you. Sipping red wine while admiring beautiful paintings and sculptures sounds like a flawless plan. But as soon as you enter the museum, you feel completely breathless, startled, and too stunned to speak. You experience a sense of overwhelming awe and suddenly feel incredibly dizzy due to all the beautiful art pieces in front of you. Your date thinks you're falling in love or having a bizarre reaction to the museum air conditioning, but you are honestly just experiencing Stendhal syndrome, aka aesthetics syndrome. This condition is a very rare psychological disorder that affects the way your brain processes beautiful objects. While every other person in the museum seems positively pleased with the art pieces, you, on the other hand, would feel dizzy, stunned, moved to tears, and might even faint on several occasions. This bizarre reaction to art is like your body's way of saying, "This is too much beauty to handle." Looking at a piece of art would trigger an intense adrenaline rush that would literally make you feel like you were skydiving. It's like all the artistic data overloads your brain's Wi-Fi. Well, the good news is that Stendhal syndrome isn't really dangerous and mainly affects those who are highly sensitive and prone to intense reactions. So if you usually cry after watching cat videos on YouTube, in that case, you should stay away from art museums before you experience a major psychological breakdown over the Mona Lisa. Erotomania. The average human has probably had a crush on some famous person once or twice in their lives, but the crush usually fades away over time, especially when you realize that Brad Pitt will not show up at your doorstep with a bouquet of roses. However, for someone with erotomania, this crush and intense likeness of a famous person is multiplied by 10,000. They're utterly convinced with all their heart and soul that a celebrity is madly in love with them, even though they've never met the person. It's like believing you're in a secret romance, except the secret is so well kept that even the celebrity has no clue. You might think, hey, this sounds like a regular crush. But no, it's a whole different ballgame. If you have erotomania, you're way past the point of a harmless crush. You believe that your celebrity crush is secretly in love with you, and anyone who tells you otherwise is clearly just jealous of your perfect relationship. It's like having a secret admirer, except you're the admirer and the secret part is that it's all in your head. This delusion can wreak havoc on your life. You might turn down real-life romantic opportunities because, in your mind, you're already in a serious relationship with a pop star. If your crush so much as smiles or winks in a TV commercial, you'll be convinced it's a coded message just for you, a signal of their undying love. You would constantly think about the person and might even resort to stalking and other intrusive behaviors like checking their Instagram page 50 times in one day, something similar to what your ex used to do. Boanthropy. Imagine this. One morning you wake up feeling particularly motivated and decide that you're not a human anymore. Nope, you're a cow. Well, this is because boanthropy is a rare psychological disorder where a person believes they are a cow or an ox. Yes, you heard that right. So instead of going to work or school, you might feel an irresistible urge to head to the nearest grassy field and start grazing. Now, not only do you identify as a cow or ox, but you'll also act like one. You'd literally swap out your suit and tie for a bell collar, and your breakfast cereal is replaced by a fresh patch of lawn you can't wait to munch on. on. This peculiar condition really goes beyond mere imagination or play acting. If you have this condition, friends and family might find you out in the backyard chewing cud, or at least trying to, and gazing blankly at them, contemplating the complexities of bovine life. They might say, "Hey, what's up?" and you'll respond with a casual "moo." Boanthropy is thought to be caused by a mix of psychological and social factors. Some say it's triggered by stress or a deep desire to escape human responsibilities. Others think you just really want to connect with your inner cow. But don't worry, it's not permanent. With some therapy and a gentle reminder that your tax forms won't fill themselves out, most people eventually return to their human selves. Until then, let's hope you enjoy your time mooing with the herd. Ekbom syndrome. For the past 3 weeks, you have been tormented and traumatized by bedbugs. But now that you've finally fumigated every crook and cranny of your house and thrown away all your old infested furniture and clothes, you believe it's time to get back to your beauty sleep without worries. However, a condition known as Ekbom syndrome or delusional parasitosis rears its ugly head and puts a stop to all your sweet dreams. This rare and disturbing condition makes people believe they are infested with parasites even though there is absolutely nothing there. This isn't just a fleeting itch or the result of watching a creepy crawly movie. It's the intense and almost paralyzing fear that your skin is constantly crawling with bugs. It's like having a pet bug you can't see, feel, or find. Talk about high maintenance. You would feel as though the bug is constantly crawling on or inside your body, leading to constant scratching and picking that can leave open wounds and sores all over your body. You might even start to actually see the tiny creatures in your surroundings and your skin, but honestly, it's just your mind playing tricks on you. This delusion can lead to severe anxiety, OCD, vivid hallucinations, and intense discomfort. Your financial and social life would also take a nosedive because you would spend all of your time and money looking for imaginary bugs by hiring pest control and fumigation services over and over again. Dyscalculia. So, it's another day of sitting in your algebra class and everything looks normal. The teacher is busy writing down weird calculations on the board, the students nod attentively and copy the calculations, and even the trees outside your classroom window seem to be doing exactly what it was meant to do. Well, except for you, or rather, your brain. You see, for the past hour since your algebra class started, you have been unable to make sense of anything happening because your brain interprets numbers the way a DJ remixes songs, totally offbeat and unpredictable. You've been noticing this for a while now, so you convince your mom to take you to a doctor, and after a series of tests, it is confirmed that you have a rare mental disorder called dyscalculia. It basically affects the way your brain interprets numbers and mathematical problems, and people with this disorder find it extremely difficult to solve the most straightforward math problems or even count numbers correctly. Everyday tasks like shopping, budgeting, and cooking become a constant battle with numbers, and one you will not win. It's as if your brain is doing a cha-cha dance with numbers, and while others see a straightforward 2 + 2, you see a jumbled mess of absolute rubbish. I mean, if you think math is tough, you should really try seeing it through the eyes of someone with dyscalculia. It would honestly be easier just to ask them to detonate a bomb. But that's probably not a good idea either, considering the fact that timers also have numbers. Well, you can see the problem. Living with dyscalculia is like trying to catch butterflies during a hurricane, but thanks to our sponsor for today, Brilliant, your math-solving problems just became a lot easier to live with. You see, Brilliant is not like the regular platform that promises to help you navigate the world of maths and technology but leaves you with tons of materials that make no sense. This platform applies a hands-on approach like nothing you've ever seen. I'm talking about interactive lessons that will teach you everything you need to know about mathematics, AI, data analytics, and programming from the ground up. Not only that, Brilliant's methods have proven to be 6 times more effective than simply watching lecture videos, and all the content provided on the platform was crafted by experts and an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professionals from all the big tech industries like Google and Microsoft. To be a part of this and try everything Brilliant has to offer, all you need to do is visit brilliant.org/theevaluator, or you can also find the link in our description. You'll also get 20% off your annual premium and subscription, and everything is free for a full 30 days.